that, I'll turn it over to Justin to introduce our speakers.
So today's presentation is going to be presented by Jason. He is a principal professional engineer in the Transportation Project Delivery Design Division of Hennepin County, working to deliver road reconstruction plans, specifications, and estimates, and managing a team of engineering and technical staff. Jason holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering from NDSU and a professional engineering license in the state of Minnesota. He has worked as a transportation engineering professional for approximately 25 years, including both public agency and private consulting experience. Alicia Valenti is a senior project coordinator with Metro Transit's Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Department, who has worked on all stages of BRT projects from alternatives analysis to construction over the past 8 years. She has a bachelor's of public administration from Auburn University and a master of urban and regional planning from the University of Minnesota. She has managed design and advised on design and construction issues on the Beeline Lake Street project since joining Metro Transit in the summer of 2023. And Jeanette is a traffic and transportation engineer with Kimley Horn and Associates, who specializes in street and transit projects in complex urban environments. She has a bachelor's in civil engineering from Iowa State University and a master's in civil engineering from Penn State. Jeanette has spent her 24-year career on local transportation projects in Minnesota and has led the consultant team for this project since 2021. Give a warm welcome to our presenters.
Thank you, Justin. Can you hear me okay? Kind of Nathan in the corner. Cool. Like I said, I'm Alicia Valenti. I'm a project coordinator with Metro Transit and leading design on the Beeline. So probably familiar with what Arterial Bus Rapid Transit is, or ABRT, but it's a quick overview: network of high frequency, high quality transit, improving service on our highest ridership corridors. So the Beeline is our seventh, that's not right. I think our seventh BRT route. It opened in June of 2025, connecting to an additional 7 metro routes, including the green and blue lines, the E line that opened in December, and more. And ABRT improves our local service by kind of increasing the space between stops with 2 to 3 stations per mile, so you're stopping less frequently, spending more time moving and less time at each stop. We implement comfortable stations that have shelters with light and heat. They have seating, real-time information, which helps people, makes your wait feel shorter when you know when the bus is going to come. And then we have off-board fare collection and nearly level boarding, along with all-door boarding, which allows people to walk right on the bus, and again, contributing to that less time stopped, more time going. And in addition to all of that, we work with our local partners, such as Hennepin County, to implement TSP along the routes and bus lanes where possible, again, helping to keep us out of traffic and keep both traffic operations and transit moving smoothly, getting everyone where they need to go more quickly. And the Beeline improves service on what was our highest ridership local route, the Route 21. It had been at about 7,500 riders per day. It's increased by more than 20% since then. Definitely over about 8,200 riders per day since when I last checked, and probably even higher since then. It is a 13-mile route with 33 stations connecting from Lake in France at the edge of Minneapolis across to downtown St. Paul, traveling along Lake Street, Marshall Avenue, and Selby Avenue with 33 stations. And 6 of those miles, 13 stations, are on Lake Street, and that's where we teamed up with Hennepin County to make some local improvements alongside the Beeline. And with that, I will hand it to Jason.
Thank you. Thank you. Jason Stabell from Hennepin County. Curious who's worked on this project in the last couple of years? Fair amount of you. Thank you for all your help on this. If there's any traffic modeling, I'm going to turn right to you to answer it. So you didn't know you're going to be part of the presentation, but you will. So Metro Beeline had a project along Lake Street. The county had some issues that we were trying to address for this corridor that had been reconstructed within the last 10 to 15 years. So it was about how can we do some spot improvements and make for a better corridor. You know, it was not time for a full reconstruction of this corridor. So we're trying to preserve and modernize. It's getting time for maybe a mill and overlay for some portion of it. Improve safety, reliability, and comfort for all. Provide transportation choices and enhance quality of life, livability, and competitiveness. And then protect and enhance the environment. So as you can see, not only us, but City of Minneapolis had some shared goals to, like we say, safety for all users, increase transit speed and reliability, improve conditions for people walking. So some guiding principles we had were the safe systems approach. I think most of you are familiar with that. We had a complete and green street policy that were at the county, and then we also have city policies that are similar. We had a climate action plan and then disparity reduction goals for the county. I will note that the county has updated that to be disparity elimination. So they're taking that to the next step, trying to eliminate disparities. It's kind of like towards zero deaths. The goal is to get to zero. So it's very aspirational. So we'll see how we go. So safety, 30 plus fatal or serious injuries, crashes in the last 10 years along Lake Street. We felt it's a highly pedestrian corridor, a lot of people crossing at a variety of different crossings, signalized and unsignalized. So pedestrian crossing safety is a priority. A lot of the road is a 4-lane undivided, and then there is a portion near Uptown that is split, Lagoon and Lake, and it's a 3-lane section on each of those roads. So it was a 3-lane one way can cause a lot of issues with people leaving and speeds. So you're very familiar with the safe system approach, I'm sure. So those are some of our guiding principles. So some key safety counting measures we're looking at are 4 to 3-lane conversions where we could do that. Pedestrian refuge islands where we could fit those. And curb extensions and bump outs. So where can we get these put in strategically along the corridor to help with those pedestrian crossings? So kind of our complete and green streets, provide transportation options for all, foster positive health outcomes and context sensitivity. So this is our graphic at the county of kind of priorities, and it's not a hierarchy per se, but the most vulnerable people are at the top. People walking, apparently dogs without anyone taking them, and then people in wheelchairs. So our climate action plan is to reduce vehicle miles traveled throughout the county, advocate build out of planned transit routes, and develop of new routes. So we're very much partnering with Metro Transit on that, and then preserve and modernize our road system. So disparity reduction, as you can imagine, the county is a huge entity. It's not just transportation. It touches your life in many ways you don't even realize. So our part of that, transportation is connectivity. So technology, transit, transportation systems are accessible, affordable, and climate friendly. So our Lake Street approach is to find a technical solution that addresses safety needs, improves bus speed and reliability. So we want to try to improve the transit times for buses going along this corridor, address asset needs. Like I said, we didn't want to do a full reconstruction. So where can we make those updates without a full reconstruction. And then we did not even have this project in our CIP. So B-line's coming along. How do we bring this into our CIP and not delay the B-line? So a lot of applications to try to get additional funding, and then, you know, a lot of coordination between all the different agencies. So this kind of, you know, generalized look of what the Lake Street corridor was, you know, 4 lanes in each, 2 lanes in each direction, a lot of parking, and so that's what way it did look. So some of the alternatives that Michael was looking at modeling was, you know, can we relocate a lane in each direction for bikes? So have dedicated transit only lanes in both directions, but then we would be not having any left turn lanes. So to just 1 lane in each direction. That ended up not being a very successful scenario. We looked at, you know, keeping a 3-lane section and then eliminating parking along the corridor. That was not a scenario that was well received, so that one got taken away. So what we ended up with is kind of a 3-lane section. It's reallocating 4 lanes into 3 general purpose traffic lanes, and then the 4th lane will be is a transit only lane. And through the traffic modeling, we were trying to figure out where are the most logical places to have that transit only lane that gives us the best advantage. So sometimes it's westbound and sometimes it's eastbound. And so a lot of coordination between all the agencies to see where that transit will get advantage, and then without horribly impacting vehicle mobility. We were anticipating over time that there would be a reduction in traffic just with mode shift. So there wasn't a big projection of increase of traffic with this modeling. And then we were able to keep the left turn lanes where they're needed. So then we were like, okay, we got a project and it's this much money. How do we fund this? So we did a raise grant in 22, I think it was. Boy, that time flies. And it was apparently a very successful one, and one that the US DOT wanted to promote. So we have the DOT person, Pete, and then our county commissioner coming out of the bus there, and it was well received, well publicized that we received this grant. And so we also then applied for regional grants, you know, the regional solicitation, HSIP. I think my next slide gets there. So we got $12 million for raise. We got $2 million for HSIP, $2 million for STIP. And then the state had IIJA match for the raise grant. So we were able to cover our 80-20 match with a IIJA match. And then we had state aid. Minneapolis had some local funding, and then Met Council also provided a little bit of funding for the Lake Street portion. So there's a total of $30 million for this project that we didn't even have in our CIP. Plus the $30 million that E-Line was putting in. So this is a $60 million plus project. And so I kind of talked about this already, but, you know, converted 4-lane to 3-lane. And so kind of a graphic there, if you go over there, sorry. And we have BRT stations, and then this is probably more on the east side. So the 4-lane to 3-lane conversion, and then this and that portion east of Highway 55 is the westbound is a transit only lane. So project delivery, we went from a B-line planning environmental, Lake Street, how do we improve some safety along here? It merged into one project that was led by Metro Transit to construct. We wanted to not delay everything. So we split it into 2 different packages. We had an east package that got constructed in 22, and then a west package in 23. And so all the funding, all the NEPA. So if you're familiar, NEPA for FHWA is not the same as NEPA for FTA. So making sure those 2 documents work well together is a lot of coordination. And last June, it opened, and I will transition over back to you.
Yeah, so this graphic just kind of shows how we divvied up the construction on each. So we were able to do the east package work while we were still finalizing the west package design. That helped keep the D-line on schedule. We did ultimately delay our opening by 6 months to make sure we had enough time to get everything done and, you know, not pay a bunch of money for contractors to be incentivized to meet a December start. But on the whole, allowed us to build a project that provided much broader community benefits, traffic safety, pedestrian safety, transit priority, without too much impact to our schedule. Yeah, sorry to the people over here. So successfully launched in June, and like I said, have had huge growth in ridership since then. But in the 2.5 years that we were doing construction, did have to do a lot of community engagement because of the scale of work, the impacts to traffic, the impacts to business, that sort of thing. So you can see I have high level numbers on what we did, but beyond this, you know, the community event attendance and the door knocking and all of that, we also we were doing a lot of direct engagement with businesses, and something that we include in our contracts is that our contractor needs to coordinate with businesses when they're going to be impacting access. And it's there, people don't always follow it. We were fortunate to have a contractor who is really proactive with these things, and also fortunate that we had the same team from East Package to West Package, so they were familiar with the context, didn't have kind of that onboarding process, and they were really good about like going to businesses and saying, hey, we're going to be replacing a catch basin, or we're going to be rebuilding your sidewalk. Like, when can we do this to make it work? And there's one business that was going to have a big weekend event, and so they coordinated so they could redo the sidewalk in advance of that event and not, you know, either have it torn up or just old when they were hosting people for that. And another example is we're replacing a catch basin next to a restaurant. Again, had to tear up the whole sidewalk part of the road, and they coordinated with the business so they could do it, they work on a Monday when they were closed, and it wouldn't be impacting people being able to access. And it was really great to have that kind of proactive, community-focused communication from our contractor. It made life easier for us and better for the community, showing that like we are dedicated to supporting local business in what can be a challenging time. There were still issues. We had removed sidewalk in a part of Uptown, and then got heavy rain. Because there was a business with an areaway, it wasn't sufficiently waterproofed. They got water in the basement. They weren't happy with it. And technically, like legally, the property owner is responsible for the waterproofing and maintaining the basement, also letting us know that it's there in design. That didn't happen. And so we could have gone to them and said, hey, you need to do this. But that would have taken a lot of time. It would have impacted our project schedule, and it would have looked bad, honestly. So it was, that particular removal was associated with county work, and so they made the decision to just go ahead and pay to refresh the waterproofing, get it back in good shape, and we were able to stay on schedule, get everything, the sidewalk put back in, and again, demonstrate that commitment to supporting businesses how we can throughout construction. We did also have issues where Excel or Centerpoint was doing gas main replacement ahead of our work, and they would like block alleys and not tell business owners that they were coming in, and they thought it was us. So that did create challenges in communication, but something that really helped is having a construction hotline. So you didn't have to like figure out which agency is doing this work, who do I talk to. You just had one centralized spot that you could go and say, hey, I'm having this problem, what's going on, and then we could work to address it as needed. And so on the whole, despite some of the challenges in terms of, complaints about traffic and that sort of thing, I think that engagement went well on the whole. Some additional challenges that we ran into is this operator restroom, where this is at the western end of the Beeline at Lake in France. And as we were starting to design on this, it's located on Hennepin County right-of-way, and there's some interest at the county in eventually redeveloping this. So they didn't want us to build something where they would maybe one day put housing or something like that. And so we worked with them to move the restroom to a spot that was acceptable to us both. And then later on in the process, as we're going through PDR, the city said, oh, actually, you're within 10 feet of a sewer line, and we'll need an easement over the whole building so that if we need to do a repair or replacement, you have to just tear it down and rebuild it. And we're like, that is not acceptable. We're spending really a lot of money just to build a little one stall bathroom, and we need to have continuing control of it. And we worked with them. We explored lining the sewer. We couldn't really change the location of the building at that point, but looking at some options, and ultimately decided that just relocating the sewer line was going to be our best option because it got it far enough away with excavation limits that our building could still be there, even if something did happen with the sewer. So it did cause some delay, but ultimately we were able to resolve it and get our bathroom built. Mississippi River fiber crossing has also been a challenge. So it's kind of been treated as a private utility rather than a public utility. So we ran into some coordination challenges there. We also, as we were trying to find a path to get conduit in and route fiber across the river on the Lake Marshall Bridge, we ran into some barriers with agency coordination. And after a lot of false starts with potential fiber solutions, we finally did find a way to install new conduit under the bridge with some new hangers. We had several rounds of field investigation, so even that approach has undergone some revision, but this spring we will finally be getting that fiber in. It is critical to having a resilient network that supports critical BRT features, including real-time signage and the emergency phones and cameras that we have at all our stations. And right now it's a one link, and we have a temporary solution through CenturyLink. And if anything happens to like one pylon that a car hits it, that knocks out everything downstream. And so we're trying to get a more resilient network for long-term use. So finally getting there. In public engagement, I covered a lot of this already, but one other challenge that we ran into is that landlords would not tell businesses that construction work was ongoing or coming up. And so we would have new businesses come in and they were like, we opened a week ago and now you're tearing out a sidewalk. Like, why are you doing this? Like, we can't, how are we supposed to survive? And so building networks with business associations like Lake Street Council was really valuable for us, helping to get that communication with individual businesses, that and just having our outreach coordinators out there on a regular basis so they could keep an eye out for that kind of business turnover, and we could establish connections to make sure everyone knows what's going on, was really helpful, again, for us maintaining good relationships and supporting our community through construction. Citronette, yeah.
I get to talk about the fun part, which is unique design elements that we incorporated into the project. I really like these two photos. They just show some of the context of the station. So while the Lake Street piece was a huge part of the project and really did a lot for the Lake Street corridor, we also built 27 stations, and that context ranges a lot. So the photo on the left, this is the station at John Ireland and Marshall. It's part of the Capital Area Historic District. It's right outside the St. Paul Cathedral. So that's one type of context. And then the photo on the right is a station that's right outside a business, on-street parking, door fronts right at the right of way, very different context. And so trying to apply a typical BRT station at many, many contexts is one of the design challenges of the project. This is a piece on Lake Street that came into the scope pretty late in the project. This is a two-way bikeway that was added on Lake Street between Bede-Makaska and Humboldt Avenue. So this was a piece where the city's long-term bike plan identified a bicycle connection in this area. The existing street, this is in the one-way section of Lake and Lagoon. So Lake Street had three driving lanes, 2 parking lanes, and it was 60 feet from curb to curb. So really pretty wide. And the speeds were, as you might expect, pretty high. So this was an area where it's a little hard to tell in this photo, but the curbs mostly stayed in place, and we were able to add a curb protected 2-way bikeway, as well as the transit lane and retain parking. This is a heavy residential and business area. So it was really a win-win in terms of being able to make that bike connection, but then also being able to retain some of the things that were important to the people that live and have businesses in this part of Uptown. We do have a couple of queue jumps on the corridor. These are typically where the bus lane ends and a bus needs to merge back into the through lane of traffic. We have transit signal priority on every signal on Lake Street, but there are still, of course, times when the bus might arrive on the red. And so that's kind of what the situation you see here. The bus arrives on red. There are vehicles queued in the general purpose travel lane, and that bus needs to merge over into the general purpose traffic lane. That can result in some transit delay or delay to the people on the bus. And so we use a queue jump signal, which is this little white bar that's right there. It sort of is like an LPI in that it gives the bus a head start to get ahead of the rest of the traffic. So when that bus is detected at the stop bar and it receives the vertical bar, then the bus can jump the queue of vehicles, and then vehicles will get the green right after that. As part of this project, we did implement 7 lane miles of red bus lanes. That was a 450% increase of red bus lanes in the Twin Cities Metro. So it did give us a lot of opportunity to develop and refine the standard application. What is the material? What is the skid resistance? How do we want the pavement messages? So counties, cities, MnDOT, all were part of that process to kind of fine tune that. And then MnDOT actually helped us with skid resistance testing after the markings went in. With the significant expansion of red bus lanes in the region, we also developed some public information to help people understand how to use the red bus lanes, when you should drive in them and when you should not drive in them. So that was part of the project as well. And then finally, just kind of some of the numbers that explain the magnitude and the impact of the project. So as part of the B-line, our project designed and constructed 27 BRT stations. We had 236 pedestrian curb ramps, 7, like I mentioned, 7 lane miles of bus lanes, 31.5 lane miles of mill and overlay. So almost all of Lake Street was milled and overlaid. That was part of what the county's portion of the project brought forward. 18 median refuges and curb extensions that were new, quarter mile of new curb protected 2-way bikeway that I talked about, and 55 traffic signal updates associated with the 4-to-3 conversion as well as TSP implementation. So just we touched almost every single intersection on Lake Street, in addition to all the work in St. Paul as part of this project as well. So last, I just wanted to mention, I think this project was really successful because both Metro Transit and Hennepin County were really committed to the partnership and about making it work. Jason mentioned this project was not in the CIP. That was a big hurdle. Once the county had all of the federal money, which was all FHWA money, they handed that money over to Metro Transit. That's a lot of trust, because then Hennepin County is giving that money to Metro Transit to administer, and then Hennepin County is getting reimbursed. So that's not something you see every day, but it was a really strong partnership that worked throughout the project, and without that, it just would not have been as successful as it was. So with that, I will stop and we can answer any questions people have.